So hello to those who are out there watching our Ask Us Anything for the Communication Leadership Program at the University of Washington. I'm Hanson Hosein. I'm the director of the program, and I have been in this position since 2007. And I'm happy to take any questions you have. Just use the chat box on the right of your viewer, and I will repeat those questions as you are chiming in. In the meantime, unless I hear from you, I will just give you a little rundown about the program, about what I'm seeing right now in my world, and about how I'm enjoying the fact that it's not raining today, and I actually did ride my bike yet again into class. So welcome, and thanks for joining me. So as I mentioned, I've been director of the program since 2007. The program actually was created in 2002 as a digital media master's for professionals, for continuing education, for folks who were looking to see where communication was going from a digital point of view and weren't necessarily getting satisfaction on the job because so many of the industries had yet to catch up to what was going on from a technological point of view. And so when I came on in 2007, the program definitely had a focus in heavy digital. My predecessor had a background in cable television, so was looking at content. And my background was also in television news, but I'd also made the transition a few years previous, starting to play with nascent social media technologies and understanding that this new way of communicating required new ways of breaking through. And my epiphany when I was creating my own documentary back in 2005, 2006 was this focus on storytelling tied to the relationship of communities and networks. And so I use that as a lesson in terms of how I would assume the direction of the program. And we pivoted in 2007, 2008 to this focus on storytelling and using social. And it just happened to be very good timing. With the election in 2008, where social media for the first time played a really crucial role, a lot of mainstream organizations suddenly understood that these digital technologies not only were here to stay, but were changing entirely how we were going to do business. And so we were able to develop some of the early best practices in that kind of communication. Even as the students who joined us were also experts in their own field and actually helped us in a very collaborative way to determine where we should go with communication now that the rules are being rewritten even as we were studying them. And in fact, we were helping to create some of those rules. So it's been a very exciting time from that point on to now. And I feel like we're at our next inflection point when it comes to communication and digital and technology because of where we're going beyond the screen, even beyond media, thanks to the Internet of Things, virtual reality storytelling, just this idea that the technology is now moving into our physical world. So I'm just keeping an eye right now in the chat box. If any of you have any questions about the program, about applying, about where this subject matter is going, feel free to go ahead and type. And in the meantime, I'll just keep talking and hopefully say something that's useful to you. So some of the things that I've got in mind now as we're looking at it is that while technology has driven a lot of the changes we've seen over the last decade and definitely have turned industries upside down and has made us look very differently about how we communicate, but also the fact that the role of communication itself in the professional setting has risen to such a degree where I've come to call it a world of communication first, that a CEO or any top executive within an organization has to have communication as a skill, as an aptitude, because we are now in the state of 24/7 outreach and connectivity, that people have an expectation that they're going to have some sort of relationship, whether it's internally or externally within an organization. So we have basically worked with a lot of organizations and companies, even especially here in this region, from Amazon to Microsoft to Intel, to help them think differently about how they do communicate. And this is why one of the reasons we talk about communication as a leadership function, because we think it's become that expansive. One question is, how does communication leadership address new technologies and trends as they pop up? Are they immediately incorporated into the curriculum? And that's a really good question because both the curse and blessing of actually having to provide a curriculum or a program in this field is that it's changing very quickly all the time. And so on one hand, you want to make sure you provide as much relevance as possible to our students. And we definitely see I take it very seriously that I want to make this as relevant and current as possible to them so they feel like they're investing their time and their money in something that's going to give them immediate payback and long-term payback as well. At the same time, you can't be too reactionary to all the technologies that are popping up, because some of them that do emerge don't necessarily stick around. If you can think about all the rage that happened around, for example, Foursquare a few years ago, there's definitely interest in geolocation and digital media, and that continues. And we actually advise a few companies, and we have relationships with companies in this region that do that. But to actually think that we should, provide a class in Foursquare, or say, now we're going to study this, is just not, we don't want to be that knee-jerk, because you have to give these things time to percolate, to see where they're going. And much like things that happen in current affairs, we can never really get a good sense immediately of what it's going to mean now. You have to give it time to see, what does this truly mean from a strategic point of view. And so while we definitely discuss things as they're happening in our classes, and we definitely give our students opportunity to play with them, we don't necessarily say, well, this is now a hot technology, let's create a class out of this. Technology does not drive our curriculum. Rather, it's how do people connect, communicate, and influence and persuade in relevant ways now and maybe in the future, that we can help our students think about from a strategic point of view, that they can implement on the job or in their own lives. And so it's very much starting with the human connection, facilitated by technology, but not necessarily driven by technology. And increasingly, we want to make sure that we're not so wedded to the devices and the gadgetry that we lose sight of what's truly happening. Indeed, this year, every year we have a common book for our program, and this year we decided to offer Geek Heresy, that's Heresy, written by Kentaro Toyama, who's a former researcher, or formerly from Microsoft Research, and now is at the University of Michigan High School. And he basically said that all technology really does is amplify existing human forces, whether for good or for bad. And so while we look at things like the Arab Spring a few years ago, when there was this uprising in the Middle East against current regimes, whether they're democratic or not, by people, a lot of debate that happened in our classes was whether it was social media that actually made that happen. And I guess a few years later, we realized that while the social technologies definitely helped and maybe hastened some of the uprising that happened there, when those kind of things happen, people are going to use whatever's available to them. It was the fax machine in Europe in the 1980s when the wall fell. During the French and American revolutions, they were pamphleteers. And so as long as you've got the sort of social cohesiveness and desire from a community point of view to do something, to affect some kind of change, they're going to use the existing technologies to make it happen, for better in those situations, and sometimes for worse. And we see, for example, how extremist organizations such as ISIS have become very good and very adept at using social technologies to recruit and to communicate with their followers. And so it really, technology itself is probably agnostic and amoral, but how we use it as humans, it's up to us from a morality point of view. So while digital and technology definitely serve as a foundation for our program, we don't focus on it entirely. Indeed, we have 2 degrees. We have our master's in digital media that looks at how you communicate and how we affect change more from a content point of view, and how you can produce things to make that happen. And then we have our 2nd degree in communities and networks that definitely has that content element, but focuses more on the relational. How do humans connect to each other, sometimes using technology, sometimes using face-to-face, using basic communications principles in order to affect that change. Put together, both of those degrees really do come to the heart of what communication leadership is fundamentally about, which is using stories, content, things that ways for us to actually incentivize human relation to the point that we can get people to do, think, or act differently based on what we're trying to communicate to them. And here's a question here from Robert Sutton. Is the program more geared towards working professionals who would apply skills at their own jobs, or would it also suit a soon-to-be graduating undergrad looking to build a career in communication? That's a really good question. when I first started leading this program, it was very much geared towards the working professional. It was very much like an MBA where you wanted folks to have a good numbers of years of experience so they could bring something to the table, and we treated them as such. However, in the last few years, what we found is that given the state of this subject matter in the industry, we have a lot more folks coming right out of undergrad into the program. So we have this really interesting mix of 3 generations in our program, from millennials to Gen X to Boomer. And it makes for a really great dynamic in our program. We do certainly welcome folks who are just coming out of undergrad who are looking to build their careers, mostly because they actually do bring some real relevant skills, given that they are, in many ways, digital natives. They've been using this, you've been using this since you were quite young. And so what we're looking for from that particular demographic is a real sense that beyond just using it for fun, that you've experimented with using it in a professional setting, whether it was through an internship or you've done something on your own, such as make your own video or set up a website or just have a really interesting following, and you've actually established a really convincing voice in some kind of social way that establishes you to a certain degree as somebody who's a bit of an expert in this. And so we definitely welcome you from coming out of undergrad, and we've actually helped lead some transformation, and some of our best students have actually been younger ones. From Oakley, forgive me, I'm going to pronounce your name, your last name, Madden or Madan. Where do your graduates find jobs once they've completed the program? Are they staying in academia or joining the corporate world? Let me just make it very clear that our program is actually a program for professionals. It's not a research focused degree. So although we have a good number of academics who teach, but teach in very relevant ways, our fundamental focus is to make sure people who have come through our program can either transform their careers or establish new careers. I see this as essentially a transformative point in your lives, that if you're actually going to take the time and the money to actually come into Comm Lead, we want to make sure it pays off for you. And so almost 100%, all of our students are looking to make some kind of change in their careers. And so what we've seen, especially in our region here in Seattle, which, as you may have heard if you're not tuning in from here, is the fastest growing economic part of the United States. There are just tons of jobs. On a regular basis, we're getting 2 to 3 posts from our community partners a week that we're sharing on our, we have a listserv on our email, Comm Lead jobs. That we put out to our folks. And I'm constantly advising our students in terms of what they can take advantage of. And so, for example, some of the jobs that we're seeing that have been especially hot lately have been in content strategy, which is another word for what we do in our program, which is, the content, the story, how you put it out there, the distribution, and how you measure it. That's what we do in our program. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies from Microsoft to Amazon to Facebook, especially hiring in the content strategy field. A lot of agencies, PR, advertising, marketing are hiring our students because they bring a real breadth of skill. Not only can they understand how to deploy in terms of analytics and potentially video and content creation, but they understand also the relational and how to connect and the strategic. And so that's been really useful for a lot of organizations that come to us. REI, for example, which is, for those of you who are tuning in from overseas, REI is a well-known retailer here, based here in Seattle, that sells outdoor goods. They recently made a huge splash on social media with deciding not to be opening their stores on Black Friday here after Thanksgiving. And we have 4 to 5 of our graduates who work in their communication team who are involved in that campaign. And so to be able to have those folks in demand in all these kind of organizations makes me very happy. From Anju Cheng, what is the minimum score of TOEFL for an MCDM? Now, we have an FAQ, and I'm going to check that because I don't know that off the top of my head, even though I'm definitely involved with the admissions. It might also be on our website, but I'm just going to quickly check my FAQ. That TOEFL is essentially set not by us, but by the University of Washington Graduate School. I may just send you a link on that right now because I don't think I can answer that fully right now. So I'm just going to put the link for language requirements there. Ariella Adachi. Hi, Hanson. Where would you say the curriculum lies between the practical and theoretical? That's a great question. And it's a balance. I actually see that as a wave that we constantly surf in our program because Um, on one hand, we are a graduate program within a research-based university, and so we have to meet a certain level of rigor in terms of assuring people that they're coming to something that truly understands this world and can provide that big picture in a really rigorous way to our students. On the other hand, we are a program for professionals. We are deeply tuned to what the world is doing with these technologies, with these platforms, with this way of communicating. And we want to make sure our students are as relevant as possible in the jobs that they have and the jobs that they want to have. And so I would say that we do a really great job between the two. In fact, we have so many options now. If you look at our classes on our curriculum page on our website, that you can, for the most part, skew towards the practical. Almost all of our classes have an applied bent. Most of our instructors actually are in the field doing this stuff. However, we also offer some more theoretical stuff, whether it's looking at gaming or ethnography, that may not necessarily apply immediately to what you're doing on the job, but will give you sort of that big picture strategic view that you may apply 10 years from now. It becomes very evergreen in your education. So I would say that we are fundamentally an applied program for professionals that provides both the little picture tactical stuff as well as the big picture strategic things that equip you well for what you need to do now and in the future. What we don't do is teach how to turn on a camera, how to use an edit suite, how to use Photoshop. We provide you with the facility to find those things out and teach yourself as a teenager would these days using YouTube. And we'll definitely give you some guidance along the way. But our students come in with such a varied amount of skills that we can't we can't cater to the lowest common denominator, nor can we say, okay, the most skilled people, those are the people we're going to play with. We find ways to meet you in the middle and give you opportunities to either grow or to go even higher playing with you along those ways. From Krista Thornton, I'm hoping to develop digital marketing media skills for the public health sector. Are students from diverse backgrounds welcome, or is this primarily for those already in the digital media field? Well, given my focus and when I give talks on this, that I believe the world has become communication first, which means communication is all pervasive and everybody should be able to do this in all walks of life and all professions. We are definitely open to all diverse backgrounds. Indeed, we actually have a surgeon from the University of Washington who works at the hospital here, who's in this program because he recognizes that his world has changed and that yes, he can be an excellent surgeon, but also just to stay relevant and current and even to get the right kind of funding for the kind of work he does, he needs to be a good communicator as well. So he's a student in our program. We have engineers, we have folks who have been in nonprofits, all in various walks of life, and we really encourage that. What we're looking for fundamentally is not necessarily a solid digital background. We're looking for people who are entrepreneurial in their mindset, who aren't looking to be spoon-fed about the latest, but actually say, I want to experiment with this. I think this is happening. I see this happening in my work. I want to go deeper in this. And I know that I'm okay with putting myself out there, whether it's publicly on a digital platform or even in a public setting, to be able to communicate and connect. And so we have no real prerequisites in terms of the skills you bring to the program. What we're looking for fundamentally is somebody who recognizes that this world is changing so fast that you have to be prepared to try things out, to experiment, and then to report back on what you think best practices are, even as you're working with other people who are developing those best practices. Here's a question from Oakley again. I'm currently taking UW's grad certificate in marketing management. Why doesn't this program interface with UW's School of Communication at all? I'm not aware of that particular certificate in marketing management, but I suspect it's out of the Foster School of Business. And those are good questions because I would like to think that what we offer is the equivalent of a 21st century MBA. We have a couple of courses in business and marketing in our program. It's not a full-on accounting finance thing where you would necessarily find in the business school. But I find increasingly that what we offer is extremely relevant to MBA students. In fact, we've had a couple of MBA students who've done our program at the same time because they feel they're not getting as much on the communication end, and it's not as relevant nor as current as you get normally at the business school. Just a few weeks ago, I spoke to 2,000 MBA students from across the country at their annual conference. It was called Net Impact here in Seattle, and I interviewed the CEO of REI and the president of Starbucks, and when I was explaining what our program does, so many of these students were so interested about how we do it because they're not necessarily getting that currency from their business programs. So it's unfortunate there's not much overlap. We're doing our best to actually have connections with folks in business schools that see eye to eye with us, especially on leadership. But we're also carving our own path. We have our own certificate program in content strategy and storytelling. It's extremely successful if you want to just try out our program before you come to us. And we also advise a social media certificate here at the University of Washington. Let's see if there's any other questions for now. We're doing great so far. From Ariella again. What course are you most excited about at the moment? That's a good one. We're developing some really cool stuff, and so I have a number of degrees. A lot of my colleagues are PhDs, and so you may know that traditional academia, because of the field of study and the way people go about things, traditional academia is they don't change their curriculum very quickly. We actually update our curriculum every 6 to 12 months because we have to, because of the subject matter and because we're just intellectually interested in where things are going, and we feel that we need to deliver that same relevance to our students. And so, for example, in January, we're offering a more sort of thoughtful course. This is a seminar. It's not really applied, using the Netflix BBC television series Black Mirror, which aired a few years ago in the UK, looking at some very thorny social controversies around the technologies that we all use and celebrate now. And it just allows us to go deeper into that and to have, I think, the meaningful conversations that are absolutely necessary about what we're doing with this stuff. We're hurtling down so fast with all this data. I'm wearing my Microsoft band right now. I carry 2 phones, and I'm always connected. But we've never really asked ourselves the serious questions of who controls this data? What are they doing with it? Do we have the right to it? What does it mean for us 20 years from now? And so to ask those deeper questions, somebody needs to ask them, even as we're adopting all these things without even looking at the terms of agreement, is really important. So I love the fact that we've got that class that we're offering in January. On top of that, we've got some really awesome new storytelling classes. My colleague Scott Macklin is teaching our foundational class in storytelling in January. And we're looking at it from an organizational point of view. We think that every organization should be telling stories. And so how do we actually build that capacity to stories without having to put a lot of effort into it? So we're trying to build up best practices in that, and all of our students are taking that. Even as we work with a lot of cool organizations in our region, we're framing that class around environment and ocean science. So we thought we'd take the hardest communication within the organization, and how do we actually even look at what an organization does on a daily basis so they can convert very easily. How do you change people's behavior in terms of how we use the limiting resources that we have in our world to be able to sustain it? Especially around climate change and ocean acidification. And that's going to be the framing subject to the storytelling class that we offer in January. So the fact that we can do that, and we can do that on a turn of a dime, just makes me very happy. And so those are a couple of the classes. But if you look at our curriculum on our curriculum page, now this, just in case you haven't heard of us before, you're just tuning in just for the fun of it, I'm just going to put our link up just so you can see, go to the classes. There. I just, having been with the program for such a long time and led it, we started out as a very small program with 20, 25 students, and we would off order, and it really does run the gamut. It's a very exciting curriculum, and I don't think we've ever been stronger. And the students who take our program say they wish they could a quarter, and we're now offering anywhere between 7 to 10 classes to stay longer because they enjoy it so much, and they love to see what we're developing even as they're in the program. It's very much a work in process. And how many students are accepted each fall? Well, we're pretty flexible about that. We try to keep it below 65 and somewhere between 45 and 65. It really depends on where people are applying from and how many applications we get. What is important to us, more than the numbers, is getting the right composition of the cohort. We're fundamentally trying to build a community with our students. We believe that you're going to learn together, you're going to work together, and you're going to hire each other moving out of this program. And so it's really important to have that cohesiveness from the beginning. And so we have the cohort start right at the same time, And because the subject matter is so elusive and fleeting and changing all the time, we want our students to bring something to the table as well. And so we're very deliberate in terms of how we choose people. And based on a particular year's pool of applicants, we may opt to go for a smaller cohort because we just want that right composition. And so I would say anywhere between, say, the sweet spot is between 50 and 65, divided between the 2 degrees. Currently we have 2/3 end up usually in the digital media masters, while the other third end up in the communities and networks. But as a cohort, they work together, they blend together, they take some of the same classes together, and you come out in the same way at the end with the communications degree. And so that's how we do it. We tend to trend sort of 50-50 regional and a lot more international students, because frankly, there's nothing like our program on the planet right now. And we're getting a lot of attention from Europe and South America and Asia in terms of what we do. We actually just put together a video promoting our program, which I'll see if I can find it, but it's on our website. And the University of Washington, which is based here in Seattle, was just named the 4th most innovative university in the world. So in the same list with MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, the University of Washington, in terms of research and innovation, is doing amazing things. And we're very much connected to that. We have great relationships with the leadership of the university, including our new president. The provost of the university was the person who hired me. And they very much appreciate our entrepreneurial, innovative approach to how we do our curriculum, and especially the community partnerships that we have out there. Just in the last week, I'm on the Seattle Chamber Board of Trustees, and so I interface all the time with leaders of the major organizations here in our region, and they're constantly looking to me for guidance on communication, and I feel that works really well. Oh, I got the video link for our promo, so I'm just going to put that up while I just hold on a second. It's actually a pretty cool video. Oops, that was the wrong link. That was created by my colleague Alona Idlis. That really gives you the essence of what our program is about and how excited we are about it. And it gives you a sense of who we are, the people who are leading the program, my colleagues Anita and Scott and myself. And so I just put that up on YouTube, which you can watch after or now while you're listening to me. So while I wait for more questions for you, I just want to tell you what else we're working on. So what we've recognized is that as I mentioned, there's nothing really like our program on the planet. And even as we were one of the first in the world to truly incorporate how to communicate through social technologies back in 2007, 2008, we recognize that there are now a lot of other universities that do the same kind of program. And so what we've found and what we've heard from companies and leaders around the world is what they like most about what we do is our focus on story. That we are looking to see how organizations, brands, people can maximize their relationship and their connections with their constituents through this emotive way of connecting. And so what we've decided to do in the next 12 months is actually build the equivalent of a storytelling center for our program that almost function like an agency for our more advanced students. There's so much demand from organizations, especially in this region, for what our students do, for what we do, that we want to provide that capacity to them, that they can actually hire our students, even when they're in the program, to work for them, to do some of the things that we specialize in, and even as we help build their capacity. Thank you, Scott, for that glass of water. So what we're going to be doing over the next 12 months is build this storytelling cooperative that will essentially matchmake our current students with the organizations and companies in our region that want that. Even as we see that we have students who have graduated from our program who haven't gotten full-time jobs at companies, but actually have set up their own companies themselves. And so we're building a network for them to be able to become service providers to meet that incredible demand, and we give them our stamp of approval through the Storytelling Cooperative. There's a question from Robert. Is there a work while study facility within the program? That was a good, timely question, because that's kind of what I was referring to. We've tried to build up a scholarship fund, which is fairly modest, but pretty good for a program like ours, which is self-sustaining, because we are not state funded. But we've recognized that we should take advantage of the huge demand for our students' skills to connect them to all the companies and organizations that want to employ them. And while we've done this pretty regularly for the last 8 years to get our students connected while they're in the program, we think there's a more robust infrastructure that we can build just to make this more systematic. And so we're actually in the process of hiring somebody who's going to manage the matchmaking database of the storytelling cooperatives. So if you're a person in our program who's either taken a few classes and become pretty adept at content creation or analytics or social strategies, and we have, say, 20 organizations that are looking for somebody either in a part-time or full-time capacity, we can make that connection pretty easily. And it's entirely to your benefit, that if they're paying, the money goes entirely into your pocket. It's not a question of credit. It's just something that we will claim as saying that we could actually make that relationship happen. So in the next, you're going to see this much more overtly in the next 12 to 18 months, but we actually have already established partnerships with organizations that have created positions just for our students. So I mentioned REI before. They only hire one student from our program a year just for them. And these students so far have been hired on full-time afterwards. So we're looking forward to doing that more with all the organizations that are interested in what we do. So from Oakley, in your opinion, what makes for a strong application? Are candidates at a disadvantage if they don't have an undergrad degree in communications? Absolutely no disadvantage whatsoever. What makes for a strong application? We're looking for people. First of all, the thing that I read the first. I don't look at transcripts first. I don't look at any test scores, and we've just waived the requirement for the GRE. I look at your letter of intent. Why do you want to be part of this program? What do you know about us and what we offer and the transformative experiences that we want you to have that corresponds with what you're looking for and your experience and your objectives, where the two actually come together in a way that makes sense? Because if we can see that you have an intellectual curiosity, interest, or experience in something that we do, and that you see that actually helping you grow, and that you're open to actually growing intellectually along the way with us and bring some to the table as well, that's important for us. So we really do pay attention to that letter of intent. And for the first time this year, instead of requiring you to do the GRE standardized test, which we found has not provided a ton of useful data, we're actually asking you to submit a short video response, and I think that's going live sooner if it's not live already, that where we get a chance to sort of see what you have to say about yourself and why you want to be part of this program, and to see if you can just turn on a webcam and communicate with us. And it gives us a chance to see you face to face as well. And so fundamentally, it's a chemistry thing. Are you open to where we're going with technology and communication? Have you played with it? Are you thinking about how this is going to work in your career moving forward? Can you work with us, and can we learn something from what you've already done, even as you're learning from us? So no, we do not have a communications prerequisite in our degree. What we have is more of an attitude prerequisite, as well as some skills that you might bring to the table or that you're looking to grow, and it makes complete sense in terms of where we're going. So I recommend that as you're considering an application to our program, take a close look at the electives and just generally the curriculum that we offer. Read our Flip the Media blog, which is what our students put together. It's a student-run platform, and you can get a sense of what they do, what they think about, what they care about, what they're seeing. And if you happen to be here in the Seattle area, we entertain the fact that you can actually just come in and sit on a class just to see what our students are doing, what our faculty is doing. Every first Friday of the month, we have a happy hour that's sponsored by an organization. REI has done it. Facebook has done it. We're hoping Starbucks will do it. Filson, which is a local retailer, has put out a request to host our students because they want to hire our students or work with us. And so there's a chance for you, as somebody who's not in the program yet, to come to our first Friday and just connect with our students and just ask them questions and see whether it's something that fits you as well. So I really want anybody who applies to our program to come in eyes wide open. It's really important to me. And so I want you to have an honest, fair appraisal, not just from us selling the program to you, but from our students and our alumni, and from your own experiences, from what you see, to assess whether this thing is for you. Because we expect something of you as well. We want you to bring your expertise, your objectives, your credibility to the table, even as we teach you something along the way. We very much see this as a collaborative learning experience, and we cannot collaborate with you unless you consider yourself part of our community. And so it's just really important to us, and it's the right kind of people so far have come to us, As you speak to our students and alumni, you'll see how passionate they are about it, because I think what they love most, other than the fact that we are so much on the cutting edge in terms of where this stuff is going, and I think we've been really accurate and correct in terms of the bets we've made for our curriculum and where communication is headed. They love the high-touch approach that we have to what we do from a learning point of view. We take the student experience extremely seriously. From the evaluations that we require all of our professors to conduct at the end of the class, to the town halls that we have with our students on an annual basis to hear how things are going, what they want, what's missing, to just meeting with our students on a regular basis to assess what they're hoping to accomplish, what's their blue sky vision for themselves, and what path can we help direct them on to make that happen. And finally, just to be just cognizant that the more feedback that we can provide, the better. So even in our 2 foundational classes that all of our students must take when they come to the program, both of those classes are pass-fail. And that means nothing. It doesn't mean that you get to slack off, because you get a ton load of feedback from those professors, and your reputation's at stake because all your fellow students will see you performing in that class. And so I found that when we switched that pass-fail in my class, I found our students were actually working harder because they recognized that a number can be pretty arbitrary when it comes to grading. But when it comes to seeing how you perform, how you connect to your fellow students, and how you actually present, that makes all the difference in the world. And for us to make you really succeed, you have to get feedback. And we provide a lot of feedback to you, which helps you grow while you're in the program. Here's a question from my colleague Alona. What kind of student projects have made lasting impressions on you? Well, it's pretty amazing to see the projects coming out of our program. When I first started, I was very deliberate in making sure that we connected to organizations in our community so that our students could actually produce things that would go into their portfolio, but also benefit those organizations. So very early on, we had a relationship, for example, with the Pacific Science Center, which is a science museum here in Seattle. And they had an exhibit on geocaching, which is about using GPS to find a scavenger hunt, essentially. And one of our students actually created a promotional video for that exhibit. And even as the Science Center had hired an agency to create the advertising for them, they ended up using my students' video instead, the amateur video rather than the professional video, because they found it so much more meaningful and relevant. And so I love the fact that our students can actually create things for people that immediately goes out there and provides real-world benefits. Last year, I had a partnership with the King County prosecuting attorney. If you watch Law and Order, he'd be the equivalent of the district attorney in New York. And he came to us saying, I need to be a better storyteller because I want to encourage criminal justice reform in our area. And so can you help me? And so he hired one of our alumni to build his TED Talk. We created a video for him, and he was a client in my class, where our students all created this really great social and storytelling communication strategies for him to actually put out there to the world. This is how we can change criminal justice. So I love the fact that we have these amazing student projects that benefit our students, give them real world experience, have them something that they can show when they go to an employer to say, I built this, and also to actually show that it actually had real world impact, and to do that. Just most recently, my colleague Anita Verna Crofts in her class, one of her students from Saudi Arabia built this remarkable Facebook group for Saudis who live in Seattle, and it had a huge amount of interest. Thousands of people signed up, which was really amazing in terms of how we engaged. On top of that, we have some filmmakers in our program that had created a viral video in one of our classes. There was a small organization here in Seattle called Rainworks that developed this almost reverse spray paint where you can graffiti in on a sidewalk, but it's invisible and it only shows up when it rains. And it was I think it's gotten like 6 or 7 million views. It's been written up in the Wall Street Journal. A number of pop stars have mentioned the video. So this is what our students do, and they always seem to hit that amazing relevant nerve with what's going on. So I'm really happy with the projects that we have, and we have a ton load of projects. That's the applied nature of our program, and it's what our students love most. I'm going to take a sip of water here for a second. I will point out that there's a lot of collaborative work. We recognize that 21st century careers are very much built on collaboration and group work. And I've spoken to a number of leaders and HR people in various companies in our region, from Boeing to the Gates Foundation. They basically say that the competencies they're looking for aren't necessarily, coding or putting on a video camera or Photoshop. They want people who can communicate well, who can collaborate, and know how to connect. And to us, that's the essence of our program. It's that relational element. And so we want to enhance that while people are in our program. So there is a lot of collaboration amongst our students. And the good thing is that works out to such an extent that they actually end up working together or collaborating with each other even when the classes are over. And so we really prize that, and we give them the tools to make sure that's a successful collaboration, because those things can go south if you don't all have the same expectations. Do I have a link to some of those projects? That's my colleague Scott, and that link is definitely on our website, and Scott knows this better than I do. So under our stories, under Comm Lead, .uw.edu, you can see a ton load of the stuff that we do. I mean, if we're going to be talking about the relational aspect of content in terms of persuading things and people to do things differently, then we have to practice what we preach. And so we put a lot of content out there to essentially, as an organization, to show how we communicate. From the interviews that I've done with people like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, and Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, to the interviews that we've done with Kentaro Toyama, who wrote our book of the year, Geek Heresy, to the remarkable work that our students are doing all the time in our program. So if you look at the Our Stories page on our website, you'll see things like a video done about fans and ESPN, FanDuel Unadulterated Joy. We had a design swarm that was done at the Seattle Interactive Conference, where our students competed actually against other agencies, people who get paid full-time to do this kind of thing. And they did it for a nonprofit homeless initiative. And our student team actually came second. Among all the other teams that came from all these professional agencies, our students came second. And so you can see a video on our website that says Design Solutions for Homelessness at SIC Design Swarm, which I'm really proud of. And in all the other videos, we've had students who've submitted videos that have won awards at the Seattle Interactive Film Festival, which is the largest fan enthusiast film festival in North America. So just remarkable work. And it's really the stuff that our students do that I believe puts us on the map. We have incredible faculty who have really proven themselves in the world, but our students, in the stuff that they do on a regular basis, is really what proves that we're on the right path and we're doing good things. One of my favorites, well, it's hard to call it favorites among my students, but somebody I've had a long-standing relationship with, Alvin Singh, is the great-grandnephew of the blues legend Leadbelly. And so he came into the program with the focus on, now that his family was in charge of Leadbelly's archives, that he wanted to make sure that he came up with a good digital strategy for managing that legacy. And so Alvin has gone out and become an entrepreneur representing what his great-grand-uncle did. Most recently, he was at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. for a tribute to Leadbelly. Been putting out films and documentaries and finding different ways to spread the word about that. And so that's the kind of applied work that we're happy to see, that when a student sometimes is actually working on something in their own lives, whether it's on their job or something they're passionate about, and they want to bring it to the program, they can actually use the program, use our classes, take appropriately what matters to them to be able to further those projects in a way that's meaningful. And oftentimes that's really what ends up being the things that shine coming out of us, out of what we do. But I have to say that we're still a graduate program. We're a master's program. And one of the reasons you're coming to communication leadership is because you're looking to have your horizons broadened. And so even as you try to dig deeper into the things you already know and you care about and you want to know more about, we really encourage you to experiment with things that you would have never entered onto your radar, because you don't get this chance again. As you get older in life, things get a little bit more straight and narrow, and it gets very hard to experiment without consequences. You certainly can't, when you're on the job, do crazy things without worrying about whether you're going to lose your job or whether your performance will be marked. Here in our program, we want you to try to push your boundaries. And so, whether you're somebody who's already done video, we don't want you to take a bunch of video classes. You certainly can, but maybe you're going to take something completely different. Maybe you will take that class in ethnography because it may just give you a deeper understanding of something that helps you do things differently and better. And so we want you to see this as your time to push those boundaries and to experiment and to think differently. And I found invariably with a lot of the students who've come through our program, as I read their initial letters of intent when they applied, what happened to them by the time they leave is very different from what they expected. I think, their worldview was based on what they were doing professionally or what they were doing just in undergrad. And so they said, well, this is currently what I'm doing. This is what I'm interested in. But I'm always gratified that when they leave us, anywhere from 12 to 36 months later, depending on what their timeline is, that for the most part, they have actually shifted that trajectory. They've gone and done something different and unexpected. And I find that really heartening because at its core, that's what your time in graduate school should be about. It should be self-exploration, growth, and transformation. And just like any good story, you should see that character transition. And you are the character in your own story when you're coming through this program. And how you end is going to be very different from how you began. And that's definitely our role to help you make that happen. And that's why you should still consider graduate programs, because obviously you have a lot more options now in education. Whether you're doing things on YouTube or taking a certificate program or going to General Assembly, these are all different options. And we recognize that there's a greater continuum in education now, and that we all have to be lifelong learners in this world because things are changing all the time. But there's something to be said about investing that time for yourself to dig in deeper and to have that meaningful, frankly, life transition by doing a program as deep and thoughtful as ours. And we are just building this remarkable community with our amazing alumni and our students who are now become so robust and critical mass that they feel so strongly about it that it's almost like you've entered into the secret society. And if you meet another Comm leader in the office or on the street, it's almost like you've got that special handshake that says, we know what you've done. We also know what you're capable of, and I can see us connecting and collaborating down the road. And that had always been my intention. When I came to this program in 2007, I was a graduate of Columbia University, and they have a remarkable journalism school that's recognized as that kind of brand. And I said to myself, I want our program to be that for our students. That once you've checked in, this is the Hotel California line that I like to use. Once you've checked in, once you've checked out, you really can never leave. You are part of this, and we are going to help you. We're going to support you, not only as faculty, but as fellow students and alumni, to continue to grow and to continue to push the envelope in this subject matter. So it's something that I'm incredibly proud of and feel great affection, if not love, for the students who have come and gone through our program who have helped us build this. And so we've got another 10 minutes left, and you guys have asked great questions, and it's nice to see that some of you are still with us. I just wanted to see if I have anything else in my notes. In terms of next year, I've mentioned a few things about what we're doing. And as we build out the storytelling cooperative, we also want to have a few signature events as well. So in the last few weeks, I've had some conversations with interested organizations in doing that. Every year, I host a major social technology, communication, digital innovation conference here in Seattle called In Northwest. It's actually owned by the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the MC and the moderator, and it's a full day set of keynotes, and we're going to do it again this year on April 29th. And it's definitely, I've seen the draft roster, and it definitely falls in line with where communication leadership is and where it's going. And so it's exciting to be part of that. And we're also talking to some of our friends at Facebook about potentially doing a signature event for Comm Lead sometime in the spring of next year, where we can truly explore where storytelling is going. My colleagues have been calling it beyond the screen, because for now, up to now, with the digital revolution, it's been very screen-centric, whether it's been a PC, a laptop, or a mobile phone. But storytelling is moving beyond the screens, and it's definitely moving beyond media, whether that was a newspaper, a website, a magazine, video, to something else. And so even as we claim ownership or leadership in storytelling for our program, we definitely owe it to ourselves to see where this is going, and we think we are at that inflection point for that. And so one of the things we're talking about with our friends at Facebook is, what is the future of storytelling? What would we have as part of that day-long TED-type experience. And some of the content we've talked about is what's the future of content strategy, which we think is one of the hottest professions right now. You've heard probably a lot about virtual reality. It seems like every company now has its own platform, from Microsoft with HoloLens to Facebook with Oculus Rift. HTC's got something they're working on, and obviously Google's done some really cool stuff with the very accessible Google Cardboard. So we want to see where virtual reality storytelling is going as well. I actually recently tweeted out, and if you follow me either on LinkedIn or on Twitter, I'm HRH Media on Twitter, there was a great little piece from the co-founder of Pixar who basically said he didn't think that virtual reality is storytelling because it just doesn't have that same narrative structure to allow us to sort of frame it in a way that's meaningful. Because virtual reality has multiple perspectives, it's 360 degrees, something can go on one area where it's not happening in the other. But I think the jury's out on that. I think it's up to us to explore whether it's a different way of storytelling. I think we've been so wedded to our three acts, to Aristotle and to how we think about Hollywood movies, that there may be ways to think differently about what story means as we move forward in the 21st century. Not only with virtual reality, but with the data that we're getting from all these devices that are connected to each other. That all of a sudden, up to now, to incentivize any kind of change or have any kind of persuasive act, we've used media more or less to convince people to do things differently. Whether it's a really great advertising campaign or a very influential movie or a really powerful news report or even an image. That's how we've done it. But now, if we're getting real-time feedback from the data that we're getting from the devices that we have connected to us all the time, if you know that this one sip of apple juice is going to put you over your caloric count, and you've got some kind of device that's not only measuring that and telling you that, but it's also communicating that to your insurance company and may also up your premiums, well, then that actually is influencing your behavior as well. The question is that storytelling? Well, it definitely has some kind of emotional real-time impact on you. I don't know whether it's storytelling in the real sense of the word, but those are the things that we need to explore, and that's why I'm so eager to build up the infrastructure of the storytelling cooperative, even as we have these signature events with our partners such as Facebook, to understand where this is going. Because there are no definitive answers. And it's a pretty exciting time, but it's also a very uncertain time. If you're giving that power to your insurance company to say, no, you can't have that particular dessert in your fridge because they can see what's in your fridge, what does that mean for us as a society? Who gets to have access to that? How do we pull that back? Do we have that right to be forgotten? Or are we now just complete open book, totally incentivized by the more data that we give away, the more discounts we get, or the more access we get? These are really profound questions, and that's the master's part. That's the graduate part of our program. Yes, we'll give you those tactical things, and yes, you'll get the applied experiences, and yes, you'll build your portfolio. But we also have to ask those deeper societal questions because we are using these technologies without actually having truly thought through their consequences. And if we don't ask those questions as communication leaders, who else will? So that's really important for you to explore that when you're in our program, in addition to understanding how to use these tools. And that's the graduate element in the master's part of our program. So I've mentioned all the things that we're doing, all the things we're thinking about, all the benefits of being in the program. I am very open to sort of entertaining more questions from you, whether it's through this platform, but definitely through LinkedIn. I accept pretty much anybody who doesn't look like a crazy. So I'm Hanson Hosein, Hanson, and the last name is Hosein, who's interested in our program, just wants to find out more. We have ways, as I said, if you're in Seattle or plan to be in Seattle in the next few months, want to attend one of our events or just pop in and check out one of our classes, we can do that. We can also connect you to some of our alumni and our students who may be in a similar background than you are, whether it's from a professional point of view or even from a national point of view. Whether you're from China, from Saudi Arabia, or from Peru or Chile, we have students from all those countries and we can connect you to them so you can understand how our program was relevant to them and how they were able to apply it, whether they returned home. A lot of our international students actually end up staying here in Seattle, here in the United States, at least for a couple of years, because both of our degrees, the MCDM and the MCCN, have been classified by the U.S. government as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math degrees, which means Usually, if you're a foreign student, you get 1 year to be able to work after you graduate in a relevant field to what you studied. And I did that because I used to be Canadian. I'm now a U.S. citizen, but I used to be Canadian only. And when I went to school here in the States, I got my visa as well, and I worked at NBC News. But because both of our degrees are STEM degrees, you actually get 2 years here. And so that's a real opportunity if you're an international student to actually really explore what we're doing with a lot of this here in the United States and stay around. And some of our students either get green cards after that or get married to American nationals or are able to stick around because the stuff they're doing is so interesting and important to whatever organization they're working with. They want to continue that. Or they head back to their home countries and able to be ambassadors for our program and our way of thinking over there. So from an international point of view, there's just lots of opportunity with what we do in our program. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I've done over this past week that would be interesting to you. Tomorrow, I'm actually hosting an event at a conference for Global Washington, which is basically for our nonprofits and development-based organizations here in Seattle. We have a lot of them here, and it's partly spurred by the Gates Foundation, which has its headquarters here, but also because of the way we think about community and connection here in this region. There just happen to be a lot of people who want to do this. And so Global Washington asked me to host a conversation on visual communication. One of our faculty members, Liz Bance, will be presenting, as will somebody from Oxfam, about their campaigns, about how visual is really driving how they incentivize how people connect to nonprofits and to charity campaigns and all that right now, especially through platforms such as Instagram and some of the images that have been really powerful over the last year that have convinced people that they have to do something, especially with the refugee crisis in Syria. So there's just lots of opportunities to connect to our community when we do a lot of these events. And put ourselves out there. So I just wanted to see in our remaining 2 minutes whether there are any further questions. I'm gratified to see so many of you have stuck with us for this entire time as I gave this very long monologue, but hopefully you've gotten a glimpse of how we think about the program and how it might relate to what you do. I'm just going to put my Twitter handle on the chat just so you have it. And I have my LinkedIn profile too. Let me just get that. Contact information. And that's probably the platform I spend the most time on. Facebook is very much, I only allow my students to friend me once I've met them, and it's probably more of a personal thing. So there I am. Oops, LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com. And message not sent. Oh, it's not sending it. Anyway. Well, regardless, I hope you've gotten something out of this conversation today, and I really appreciate the questions that you shared with me. And please do send me any follow-up questions via LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm also hrhmedia@uw.edu on email, and I'm pretty good at responding to that. And I hope to see you. And we're also very open to meeting with you in person if you happen to be here in the Seattle area anytime in the next few months. Obviously, our deadline is February 1st for applications to the Communication Leadership Program. So you've got a couple of months to get it right. But as I mentioned, focus on that letter of intent and now on that video. And just show us how what you care about, what you want to do, and what you see matches up with what we care about, what we're doing, and what we see. And we might be able to actually work together in a formal way come September. So thanks very much for tuning in. I'm Hanson Hosein. I'm the Director of the Communication Leadership Program. Very proud with what we've built as a community and as a network in this field and here in Seattle. And I hope if you're interested and you think that you've got the qualifications, that you'll be joining us in the coming months. Thanks very much.